If I said to you, I was here to drive an electric car that had drift mode and boost mode, what do you think? Porsche Taycan? Probably something like that? You're wrong. Taycan doesn't have a drift mode, silly. No, obviously it's the Genesis GV60. So let's go drive it and probably not use that drift mode because it's a small family car and we're in Germany and we'd probably get in trouble if we did that.
There's a chance that even after its first year in the UK, you still don't really know what Genesis is. The upmarket Korean brand arrived with some striking looking saloons and SUVs last year, promising affordable luxury but appearing to deliver just some reasonably nice looking cars and nothing particularly new. But maybe this is where the Genesis brand begins to make sense. Arriving with petrols and diesels to a continent that's about to ban them felt odd, but to make affordable executive EVs? That might just be a niche worth filling. The GV60 is the first Genesis to fill that gap.
Now, the Genesis GV60's first problem, or first and second problem, is probably that it is underneath basically a Kia EV6 and a Hyundai Ioniq 5, and both of those cars look fantastic, and this one, well, looks a bit gawky, doesn't it? It's really slabby at the front. And I want to like lots of the features. I love the double headlights and I quite like the cleanliness of it, but it just looks like a fish that's been left out of water. One of those blob fishes you see that look really weird when they're out of their natural habitat, you know. But we'll crack on the rest of it because there are some good features. Obviously, de rigueur amongst all the EVs, it doesn't have wing mirrors. You can get proper wing mirrors, but if you want to reduce drag by a little bit, they're there. Same in the fact that it doesn't have proper door handles. The side profile is extremely Kia EV6. There's basically no bonnet at the front because you don't need one, and then it's very tall through the middle. What it actually does quite well is hide how big it is, because it is about as big as the Kia EV6, and that's quite a big car. It's 4.5 meters long, it's 1.8 meters wide, and it is actually 1.58 meters tall, but it does manage to hide that, possibly due to the very in at the moment floating roof, thanks to those black A-pillars. And there is this lightning design around the back that I don't actually have any marketing bump to tell you about at the moment, so it just looks funky. Above that, the charging port is just here, and there's a very nice feature on this that it will show you how much charge you have, which is actually quite useful because lots of EVs just glow red if it's not charging and green if it is, and screw you if you don't know how much charge there already was at the beginning. The back though, that's where it starts to make some sense, except for the fact that they've stuck a spoiler on it, which is made of plastic and it looks a little bit odd. But the rest of it, that looks really nice. The shoulders, the rear arches they're a lot meatier than the front. They look better, they give it a bit more balance. And then it's got these double rear lights as well as at the front, and they just work. At the back it's clean, it's nice, and it's smoother. It's just a shame that the front quarter is sort of so off. There is, of course, quite a big boot. Thankfully, because all the batteries down the bottom, it's got 432 litres of boot space here at the back. But there is more over here. Yes, because it's an EV, you don't need an engine at the front, so that means more storage. A nice big frunk. This one is the Sport Plus, which means there is a second motor on the front axle, which does slightly restrict it. But you got 20 litres. You could probably fit now 44 in there quite happily. Right. Let's talk some stats. Battery, 77.4 kilowatt hours. Range, this car with rear wheel drive only, about 320 miles. The all-wheel drive version brings that down to about 280. Range in a city, up to about 430 miles, which means you can probably go months without needing to recharge it if you don't leave your local area. Torque, 700 Newton meters if you're in the Sport Plus version with all-wheel drive and boost mode. This one, 350. 0 to 60 miles an hour in the Sport Plus, 4 seconds. Is that very close to Porsche Taycan territory? Yes, yes it is. Is this a small executive family car? Yes, yes it is. That is ever so slightly insane, but it comes with a price. Base model, £47,000. That's about £7,000 more than the EV6 underneath, and 12 or so thousand pounds more than the Ioniq 5 from Hyundai. The top one, the Sport Plus, well, that'll set you back £65,000. At which point, you've sort of got to wonder whether this car does enough to actually make a case.
Charging the GV60 is with 800 volt tech, which means that if you can find a 350 kilowatt charger, the battery can go from 18 to 80% in just 18 minutes. There's also a sort of climate control system for the batteries, meaning they can be heated or cooled to optimum temperature no matter the status outside. As battery charging is affected heavily by temperature, this should mean more consistency in recharging, avoiding suddenly finding out that what you thought was going to be a full charge is actually just 60%. The batteries power a 229 horsepower motor on the rear axle in the rear-wheel drive Premium. Sport all-wheel drive models have a 218 horsepower motor on the back and an extra 100 horsepower motor on the front, while Sport Plus models get a pair of 218 horsepower motors.
The power in the all-wheel drive car is delivered in an absolute rush, especially if you've been brave enough to press the little boost button here on the steering wheel, and it will absolutely hurl itself, especially in the mid-range. It goes from 50 to 75 miles an hour in about 2 seconds, which, whoa, that's rapid. That's racing car rapid, let's be honest. In terms of drive, this rear-wheel drive version is actually, in reality, more fun than the sporty car. You just get a little bit more to play with through the corners. Whereas the all-wheel drive one, rather than the EV6, which has a little bit more of a rear bias, and yes, there is drift mode, which will put it into a full-on rear bias, it just feels like it's more set up to understeer. But then again, it is a car that is set up to be just a little nice executive car. The steering, it's there. It turns the wheels from left to right. That's about all it needs to do. Doesn't give you any feedback as to anything that's happening underneath, but that's partly probably down to the fact that it has a little bit of trick suspension going on. At the front, there's a camera which reads the road ahead and makes sure that the damping is set up to absorb any little lumps and bumps that it might find. And you can feel it working. The way that it carries itself along the road will change depending on what's coming up, and you will notice that difference. Sometimes you'll hit a pothole or a grate that you'd expect to be really quite grating, and it actually just smoothly glides over it. It really makes a difference on long journeys. It is a very, very nicely damped car, and that's really what this car is made for. But, that said, it's not an absolute blancmange when it comes to the corners. It is very heavy. Well, in reality, for an EV, it's not that heavy. It weighs 2 tons, and this version is slightly lighter. It's just under 2 tons. The dual motor version nudges its way to about 2.1 tons. But you can feel that weight through the corners, but it does manage to gather itself together. You never feel like it's going to wobble its way off the road, but you do muscle your way around sometimes rather than sort of gliding.
Where the GV60 does excel is in its one-pedal driving. For the few un-EV initiated out there, that's as simple as it sounds, driving without the need for the brake pedal. The GV60 manages to balance its regen and drive quite nicely when you flick the pedals down to one-pedal mode. The only slight issue with the system is that if you do need to call upon all the stopping power available, it doesn't really respond quite as well as you might wish. But that is a rare issue.
Inside, they have managed to make it feel quite different to the EV6 actually, which is unexpected because it is basically the same. One of the concepts that's carried across from the EV6 is the flat floor. There's nothing under here. There are no cubby holes, no anything. That means more space, and it feels more open in here. Genesis has some wonderful marketing nonsense for you. That it's about white space, which is wonderful considering this car is entirely black inside. But you can see what they mean. There is a lot of space in here. It is airy. It almost feels like there should be an echo. You're so far away from some things. The windscreen is about 4 miles away from me over there, but it does give you great visibility and make it feel clean and comfortable. This looks different to the EV6. It still has this flying console here, but it feels different enough to not just be a copy. Yes, there's that great big screen that now appears on every single Hyundai product in the entire world, but its system inside is different, and it's very easy to use, and it looks nice as well.
But that's not quite all there is in the GV60's locker of party tricks. As well as boost mode and drift mode, it also has facial recognition tech that means that one day you can unlock it using just your face. There's also a fingerprint reader inside to scan who is in the car and set up the seat, wheel and infotainment preferences just as you left them. And then there's one more gimmick.
There's the crystal sphere. And no, that's not the latest Indiana Jones film. It's this. when you're driving, when you turn the car on, it's just your gear selector. You rotate it for your drive or your reverse mode. But then the magic happens when you turn the car off and it rotates to become a piece of art and design. Actually, it rotates to just be a little piece of glass there that has some light in it. Nothing particularly special. But you know, it's quite nice.
There is much to like about the GV60. The design is not to my taste, but it's certainly bold and the interior is excellent and extremely high quality, and the sheer amount of power available is tantalising. The gimmicks you could live without. We didn't get a chance to try drift mode in our few hours near Frankfurt, and I have to say I doubt very much it'll ever be used by anyone other than a few journalists who are wondering what it's like and some YouTubers looking for a video title. Boost mode attempts to copy Porsche's sport response, but to make all that power only available at times is, well, it seems needless. And the crystal sphere? Yeah. But the biggest problem the GV60 faces is not an issue with the car itself. Everything good that has been said about the GV60 could be said about the EV6 for less money. So, unless you have an aversion to the Kia badge or just really want to be different, what is the argument for buying a Genesis?